Hello again. In this video, we're going to go ahead and work through a very typical type of word problem you'll see for systems of equations. They like to work with percents. So let's read this. We have find how many quarts of 6% butterfat milk and 2% butterfat milk should be mixed to yield 40 quarts of 3% butterfat milk. Now, I don't have any idea what butterfat milk is, but I do understand percentages and systems of equations. So when I set this up, I'm going to first make sure I understand they are looking for me to find how many quarts of 6% butterfat milk, and also how many quarts of 2% butterfat milk. We are going to add these two together, should be mixed to yield 40 quarts, so the end result is 40 quarts of 3% butterfat milk. So we have, let's go ahead and see this, 6% being added to our 2% to result in 3%. We're going to create a chart of a sort here, in which we have the percentages, then we are going to have the amount, or in this case we are talking about quarts, and then finally we'll have the percent of the amount. And we'll hold on to that last bit of the chart for a second because it's a little bit funky. Now, we do not know how many quarts of 6% we want to mix. It is unknown to us, so we'll call it X. We also have no idea how many quarts of 2% we need. Now, it can be very different from X, it could be the same. We'll call it Y. But we do know that when we add the quarts from the 6% to the quarts of the 2%, we will end up with 40 quarts. This creates our first equation in our system. We have x plus y equals 40. And this is all the same units. They're all quarts. Now, the percentages, we don't have it where they're the same units. But we want to make sure we take a percent of an amount. Now, of, in the math world, means multiplication, so times. So we're taking 6% of x, so 0.06 times x. We're taking 2% of y, 0.02 times y. And then last but not least, we're taking 3% of 40. And 3% of 40 is 1.2. So we can create our second equation here, in which we have 0.06x plus 0.02y equals, and 0.03 times 40 is 1.2. We now have two equations here, in which case we can either use elimination, substitution, or graphing means to find a solution. Graphing is kind of obnoxious. Substitution is kind of ideal. And the reason why is, look at your first equation. We have coefficient 1. We have coefficient 1. It doesn't matter which one we pick. We could solve for x or y and plug it into the second equation. Now, pick one. It doesn't make a difference. I'm going to go ahead and pick y and solve for it. So we'll subtract x from both sides, and we have y equals negative x plus 40. Now I've ran out of space, so I need to go to a new page. Hopefully, if you need to write anything down, pause it. I'm going to go ahead and clear to the next page. And when we are here, we are going to take that y that we have solved for and plug it into our equation, in which we have 0.06x plus 0.02. Instead of y, we are plugging in this entire thing. Make sure you use parentheses so that you understand this entire thing is being multiplied by the 0.02, and it equals 1.2. Now we're going to have to distribute in order to get out of the parentheses. So we have 0.06x minus 0.02x plus, and 0.02 times 40 is 0.8 equals 1.2. Now we'll combine like terms. So we'll have 0.04x, and let's be a little bit adventurous. Let's subtract that 0.8 from both sides of the equation. And 1.2 minus 0.8 is 0.4. And now we'll solve for x by dividing both sides of the equation by 0.04. So we are left with x equals, and you can either use a calculator or you move over to decimal places. What you do at the bottom, you got to do the top. So you have 40 divided by 4, which is 10. Now, we had a word problem, so that means 10 is meaningless unless we attach some sort of unit to it. So we have to go back and reread our problem to make sure we understand what x is. So x is the amount of 6% butterfat milk, and the amount is measured in quarts. So now we can go back and we say, okay, so we need 10 quarts of 6% butterfat milk, whatever that is. And then we have to add some number of quarts of 2%. Remember, we want to end up with 40. So we can take this 10 and plug it back in to solve for y. Negative 10 plus 40 is 30 quarts of 2%. And if we mix these two together, we will come up with 40 quarts of 3% butterfat milk.